This is Prerna from Cognixia. I represent the enterprise team of Cognixia. On behalf of the team here, I welcome everybody present here today. We'll be learning a little more about DevOps and why the world has been crazy about it today. Before we get going with this session, I'll take a quick couple of minutes to introduce Cognixia to all of you. So moving to the next slide, Cognixia happens to be a digital talent transformation organization, and we have been delivering to over 45 countries worldwide and have a clientele of 450 plus customers. We have very successfully trained over 1.3 lakh professionals on various technologies. We are also authorized training partners for Red Hat, Automation Anywhere, ITIL, ISC Square, and we're also silver partners with Microsoft. There are a lot of rewards and recognitions by our side due to the quality of delivery of trainings that we have been doing since our inception. Couple of them are listed in the slide flashing on your screens. If we go on, we have centers of excellence mentioned on the screen further. And these are the core areas that we specialize into. These are courses or technologies like machine learning and AI, microservices, RPA. There are a lot many more topics and courses areas that we specialize into. DevOps happens to be one of our core specialty. So you can learn more about these from us. Moving to the next slide, we have recently started coming up with various masterclasses. While doing webinars is not the only thing that we do. Also, we are into the corporate training, individual trainings, looking at current scenario and the crisis time. We have come up with certain master classes that happen to be one-day certification courses with extensive hands-on into it. The very nearest master class is planned on 25th of April. That's the next Saturday, which will be on machine learning introduction. Again, very senior instructors would be a part of this, and it will be a complete full day session. Along with that, we will have certain more schedules for other courses, as you can see on your screens. Next would be on 9th of May, which would be about Azure IoT. We'll have the next session on 23rd of May, which will talk about make you learn more about React.js. And for now, the last session will be on 30th of May, which will be on AWS. We'll come up with more larger calendar for this, which will be circulated to you guys as well. Also, you can take benefit of our live instructor led sessions. These are virtual sessions that I'm talking about. These are extensive, complete trainings of 40, 45 to 50 hours of sessions that we conduct on our virtual platform. We use GoTo as well for that. Sessions on Python, Spring Boot, microservices, Azure, AWS, machine learning, and data science is something that you can enroll yourself into, along with ITIL V4 Foundation. Moving on, we have certain benefits of e-learning mentioned. The lockdown has been extended, and learning or the virtual platform is the only way ahead to keep the learning journey on for all of us. So absolutely, in case you have not yet gone virtual, we would request you to start thinking into that direction because it has got its own benefits. Also, if you undergo a session with Cognixia, you get lifetime access to the LMS, and LMS has all the recordings available for the virtual sessions that you will be attending, along with a lot of reference materials and ebooks and links and whatnot. Also, it gets easier for stakeholders to access to the data. There are a lot of certifications that we do for our virtual sessions as well. So yes, please drop by and drop in a query to know more about our courses that we have for virtual platform. With that, I will request Raman to take up from here. I will see you at the end of the session. Just a quick note again, I'm sorry. In case you face difficulties for the voice or the video in front of you, we will request you to rejoin. And in case the complaint continues, we would request you to join one more time. In case it doesn't help, do not worry. We will be sharing the recording links with you. Also, the participation certificate will be issued to everyone who attends the webinar completely. This will need at least a week's time, so we'll request you to allow that to us as well. Okay, so I'm good for now. Rama, you can take it up from here.
Yeah, thank you, Prerna. So, hello everyone. So, this is Raman, and we are going to talk about DevOps today. And we'll talk some introduction and what are the different tools which is helpful for the DevOps process. So, as you can see this on your screen, DevOps. So, basically, there are two things. One is development, and second is operations, right? So let me just talk about this, what is DevOps and why it is so demanding these days, and why entire world is crazy about this. So when we talk about the DevOps, at that time we are basically talking about the software development lifecycle. So whenever we are talking about the software development lifecycle, so there are different phases. So what are these different phases? So these different phases basically starts from the planning. So software development lifecycle. So let's first talk about the planning. Say an example, there is a customer and he has a demand to uh, create an application. If we take any application which is like your Gmail application, your desktop application, web application services, so it can be anything, right? So whenever you are requested or there is a requirement from the customer to develop an application, so you divide that complete software development lifecycle into the phases. So these phases are planning phase. So in the planning phase, basically we gather the requirement of the customer, we create some use cases or the test cases, we create the user stories, and user stories are nothing but these are the test cases which we are creating for the requirement, and then we give it to the next phase, and next phase is the coding. Okay, so developer is going to write the code. He or she has to do the unit testing. Unit testing is the testing when it is done on the developer level. So developer does the testing. After everything looks fine, then we move to the next phase, which is build. So in the build phase, uh, your code is basically converted into the standalone form. Means it could be the executable file like your exe file, and if you are a developer of Java, it will be jar or var file. So any file which is basically an executable file is built in the build phase. Once the application is built, then it is to be tested. So testing is very important because here it is to be validated that the developer who has written the code on the basis of the requirement, whether it is valid or not. So the testing is done on the testing phase. Once testing is successful, then we move to the next phase, which is the release. So in the release phase, we basically do the release management where we are keeping different versions of our executables. Once the release management is decided, then the latest version is to be deployed. So that goes into the deployment, means you are deploying it into the production. And once it is deployed to the production, then it comes under the control of the operation team. And that is the operation teams, they come into the picture. And they monitor your application, they monitor your the server where these application is running. This entire is a software development life cycle, and DevOps is basically a process which makes this entire life cycle, especially after the code, once the code is developed. So build, test, release, deploy, operation, and monitor. So all these activity, if you make it automate or continuous, then we use the DevOps process. So if you say the other name of the DevOps is the automation for the SDLC, so that you can say as well. Okay, so now the question arises, is DevOps a tool? Is DevOps a process? What is DevOps? So DevOps is a culture, DevOps is a process, DevOps is an approach. So with the help of DevOps, we can automate the SDLC through some tools. So for example, for code management, we use Git and GitHub. For building the software, we use MS Build, Maven, and for testing, we use Selenium. For release deployment, we use the different technologies like we use containers, we use configuration management tool like Ansible, and to create a complete software development life cycle as an automate, we use Jenkins CI/CD pipeline. So this is the introduction of what is DevOps. Now you might be thinking why the name is Dev and Ops, why it is not something else. The reason is when we are talking about the DevOps, the most important team is development and the operation team. Even though the other teams which is in between like your security, networking, testing, these are also very important, but in overall process, the starting point is development because he's developing the code, and the end point is the operation, who is monitoring your application, who is checking the health of your application, health of the host machines where these applications are running. So that is why it is named as DevOps. We will discuss something more about the DevOps. Let us first see what was before DevOps. So if DevOps is a process, is that only the process in the market, or do we have some other processes? First process or methodology which was invented, it's a long back in somewhere 1980s. That is waterfall methodology. In waterfall methodology, the requirement, the phases are almost same as we are seeing today in the DevOps. Phases are same, but the process is changed. In the waterfall methodology, when we are talking about the requirement analysis, so here we are gathering the requirement from the customer. Here is the system design, next implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So if you relate to the what we have discussed in the previous slide, so it is almost same thing. But here the customer is giving the requirement, and once the requirement is frozen and the design is frozen, means as a uh, as a project team you have represented the design of the output to the customer, and customer is saying yes, he is fine with that design. Then the process next phase starts where developer is writing the code, developer is testing the code, and then once unit testing is done, he gives it to the tester, tester tests it, and if there is some problem, he goes back to the developer by saying that there is some problem in the test, please fix those bugs, and developer fix those bugs, and in the end when everything is fine, it is deployed and goes to the maintenance. So once it moved to the production, then customer can see the result on the screen. Okay, so it may be if it is a web application, so he can see that, okay, so there is some output. And this entire process, when we are talking about the waterfall methodology, once the requirement or design is frozen, there is no participation of client. Client is only participated once he can see the product in the market. So in the market, once the product is there, customer sees the output, and he thinks that there is some enhancement or some modifications are required because my competitors, they are having some other features, and I want at least those features, or I want to have some more features which is not in my competitors world. So for that, he asks for the changes. So when he comes back to the project team for the changes, and the project teams or the IT teams who develops entire, means who participated in this entire life cycle, and they and the client is asking to make some changes, then team says, or the project manager or whosoever is the spokesperson, he says that okay, whatever the changes you are asking us to do now, we can do that, but we need to follow the entire process again. So when the process is to be started again, then whatever the time duration is required, because again it is to be developed, tested, deployment, right? So all these things is to be implemented for that change. The normal life cycle time for waterfall methodology is 40 to 60 days. That is the minimum time. It means when the customer is ordering for something or giving the requirement for something, he has to wait minimum 40 days to see the product into the market, which is not good for customer point of view, because if the changes are not big changes, but again as uh, a company who follows the process of waterfall, they have to they have to spend that much time. Okay, so total time is 40 to 60 days. And this waterfall model, it was the idea from the motor industry. So during that time there was no good methodology was founded for IT point of view, and waterfall methodology basically following the methodology or the process model which is used in the motor industry. So and one more thing, in the waterfall model there was lot of documentation was required, and as a developer or as a operation team, you always try to minimize this documentation. You want that everything should be in some form of feedback, or means you as a developer, you are not happy to write the documentation. You are happy to write the code, and operation team, you can give the statistics or you can give the metrics of the output. You can contact to the client. You can whenever there is an issue to your application or server, you have the contact list and you try to approach to the respective teams. But writing the documentation is very difficult, for especially for that those who are too technical, too much technical into the development or operation. Okay, so now this is all about the waterfall model, and there are some advantages and there are some disadvantages of the waterfall model. Advantages we have all, disadvantages we have already seen, that customer is not happy, and advantages are everything is in the process. So whenever there is a change required, so everything is recorded, everything is documented, and if there is, even though there is a minor change, so that will be clearly documented, and how it is fixed, that is also documented. So tomorrow if the issue is repeated, then you can refer to that documentation, because we are spending a lot of time while defining this process. So the chances of product instability is very less. Okay, so technology is understood and is not dynamic, right? So it's a stable. Whichever tools you are using, you are keep using those tools. And because the next requirement which comes, it is totally a new requirement. So there is no way that you are getting the duplicate requirement. Okay, so these are some advantages of the Waterfall methodology. Now let us talk about the Agile methodology. So that is the next methodology. In Waterfall methodology, the main problem was that project is quite large. Most of the time, project is large. And for example, you are going to develop an application which provides the email facility, which provides, say, an example, some search engine and some other functionalities. And what you are going to do, you are going to develop that application. To develop that application, you are in the end, once the application is developed, you are giving all the components of that application, whether it's an email, whether it's a search engine, blah blah, some other things. So that is the problem. The problem, it's not a problem actually. At the end of the project, you are you are trying to add everything which is required by the client. Instead of that, can we do something like that? If there is a requirement to create search engine, there is a requirement to create email, there is a requirement to create some other portal components, let me take a part of the project and develop it and move it to the production. So let me give you one more example. For example, there is a company, there is a mobile company, say Airtel, and that company, for example, I'm just taking an example. So it is just newly started, and what they want to provide the mobile service to their customer, and they want to provide the internet services. They want to provide, um, say, data service, internet service, calling facility, hello tunes, and so on. Now they had given this requirement to an IT company, and IT company is in the end, after 1 year, or say an example, after 6 months, they are giving all these functionalities. So that was basically your waterfall model. But now what IT company is suggesting to Airtel, what is your highest priority, so by which you can start your service or start your product into the market. Now IT company, the customer is saying, okay, you can start with calling facility. So now IT company is concentrating first iteration, so that we call the iteration, and first iteration where they are working on calling facility, and they develop that application within 10 days or 15 days or uh, within 20 days, and they are saying calling facility is ready for you, and Airtel is happy. Why? Because Airtel is getting something into the product which is the primary thing. So the primary thing is that the calling facility. So the calling facility is now in the market. So client is happy. Even though when the development of the calling facility was happening within that 20 days, so developers or the other testers, they are approaching to the company and they're saying, we have made these changes as per your requirement. Are you okay with that? And customer is saying yes or no. So customer may think, okay, at the time of requirement, I had given this requirement, something like that, but now my requirement is totally changed. So if their requirement is changed, so he says no, okay, let's do some modification, and developer is doing that modification and again testing it, and again he is taking the feedback of the customer during the development life cycle, and customer is happy because he is participating, and customer is providing the input, and in the end he has given some feedback. Okay, I'm okay with this client calling facility, so you can go ahead and put this into the market, or move to the production. So this is basically move to the production. So once it is moved to the production, then everyone is happy. Okay, and that 6 months time now reduced to 20 days. So your big project, once it is divided into the small projects, and you are concentrating on the small project and you create different iterations for that. So that methodology was invented and that was called agile methodology. Okay, so this agile methodology is basically the one which is having the continuous iterations for the development and testing throughout the software development life cycle. Both development and testing activities are concurrent, unlike waterfall model. Excuse me. Now, the individual and the team interactions over the process and tools. So these in the agile methodology, actually, there are a lot of things. There is a scrum master, there is a product owner, there is sprints, right? So there are a lot of things happen. So I'm not going in much detail of that. I'm just giving you the overall idea what is happening in the agile methodology. We will concentrate more on the DevOps, what was happening in the DevOps. So working software or comprehensive documentation. So in waterfall model, as I just explained you, that there is a documentation, and as a software developer or the operation team or testing sometimes, so they don't want to write unnecessary documentation. Here the customer feedback is the documentation. So customer feedback, uh, he sends that, okay, I'm okay with this output, go ahead and move it into the production. So that is the documentation for the developer or the tester, or to close that particular phase of the or iteration of that life cycle. So if you see here, I'm just trying to show that how it is working. So there is a project requirement, there is a stories. Stories are user stories, which is further converted into the test cases. And then we have the test tasks, and these tasks are basically which we are going to uh, take it in the iterations. So here the tasks are uh, getting developed by the developers, and there is a customer testing as well. So customer is testing this, and once he accept that testing, then we close this iteration and we move to the next phase. Okay, so next phase means next component we will take, and it may be possible that multiple iterations are executing in the parallel. Okay, and so this is done, move to production. So iteration planning meeting and customer input, and if he wants to make some changes again, we do the same process. But here, as compared to the waterfall model, where the the completion of the software development life cycle is 40 to 60 days, here 7 means 1 week to 4 weeks. That is the time. All right. So now let us talk about DevOps. So what is DevOps? DevOps is set of practice. Actually, some of the people think that DevOps is Jenkins is a DevOps, Ansible is a DevOps, Puppet is a DevOps, or Maven is a DevOps. No, these are the tools which we are using to make this particular process possible. Which process? Software development lifecycle process as automated. So DevOps is a set of practice where development and engineer participate together in the entire application lifecycle, from design, development, testing, and finally to production support. DevOps is not a tool. It is an approach, and it is a culture with objective of SDLC by bringing developer and operation closer. It emphasizes communication, collaboration, and integration between developers and IT operation personnel. So when we are talking about DevOps, so if you are a DevOps engineer, so you are basically the way to which different teams are communicating to you. Say an example, developer is having some problem to move the code to the version control system. You need to understand that what is the infrastructure need for the development point of view, testing point of view, and the operation point of view. And you are the one who is managing all these things. You are not responsible for the code logic. You are not responsible for the test script logic, but you are the one who is responsible for the infrastructure. So you can make the infrastructure automate by writing infrastructure as a code. This is the responsibility of the DevOps engineer. So when we are talking about uh, DevOps from different teams point of view, so as an example, if it is management, so what they think, what is DevOps? So they think that DevOps is the development and operation collaboration. When we talk about operation point of view, what the operation is gaining with the DevOps, they think that if there is some infrastructure point of thing is to be modified, then there is some code is executing behind the scene. So they think DevOps is infrastructure as a code. Whereas a developer, so developer point of view, who is only concentrating on the development, is not bothering how the code is moving to the production. So for him, we are just asking you push your code to GitHub, you push your code to Bitbucket or subversion control system. After that, we need to use some build technology or build tool, so that he can uh, uh, for then in that case for developer, DevOps is nothing but switching of the some features. And for DevOps engineer point of view, DevOps is an automation. Okay. Now, when we are talking about DevOps, it is the extension of Agile methodology. So, in Agile methodology, we were dividing the project into the small projects. So, same case with the DevOps. Here, the deployment is very small. So, that is why the implementation time means complete SDLC time, that is in hours or in a day. Whereas in the Agile, it was 1 week to 4 week, but here in days or in hours sometimes. DevOps is built on the concept of Agile methodology. It identifies the importance of extending Agile principle beyond the development by including operations and all other functions that supports application development lifecycle. It is more than the convergence of development plus operations. So when we are talking about DevOps, we think, okay, DevOps engineer is just doing a work which is related to development, to maintain the development, to maintain the operations. No, there are a lot of things which a DevOps engineer is doing, like whether it's related to quality assurance, whether it is related to your testing, security. So whosoever is getting some issue, they are basically looking at the DevOps engineer. How DevOps works? The code is written in a very small chunks versus large builds. So instead of large project, now the code is to be created for the small applications. Deployment happens in days, hours versus weeks or months. Development environment is identical to the production environment, or you can say development or testing. So we create the different environment. The creation of that environment is basically the job of DevOps engineer. Rapid iterations improves the speed to react to the market needs. So for example, there is a company and that company's name is changed. If the company name is say XYZ and now it is changed to ABC. Now what they are asking the IT team that can you change this name to all of my website pages? And yes, it's only a minor change. So, say an example, it's only a configuration change. Yes, we can do it and we can implement immediately. So that kind of work is basically comes into the DevOps world. So rapid iterations improves the speed to the react to the markets. Developing configurations, management code to the build infrastructure at scale. So entire infrastructure you are maintaining by maintaining your code. So for DevOps engineer, if you know shell script in Unix, if you know 10% of programming where you know how to write if condition and how to write a loop, that much coding knowledge is enough. So if you know that much programming knowledge, then you can create an infrastructure with your code. Real-time application performance monitoring to know the impact each code change makes. Okay, so you can see the performance whenever there is a code change happen. Okay, so there are some reasons that why we are going to the DevOps. So because it has shorter development cycles, faster innovations, improve communication and collaborations, increase the efficiency and reduce the maintenance, reduce the development failure, rollback, and less recovery time. So these are the main points which makes a company to adopt DevOps. So whenever we are talking about the uh, DevOps, means whether your company or your project is following the DevOps process, then it should be following these 5 phases. One is the collaborative development, continuous in testing, continuous integration, continuous delivery and deployment, and continuous monitoring. So let us see one by one. So when we are talking about the collaborative develop, development, so in this phase, basically we involves planning, coding of the application. So the development is achieved through the agile methodology, where software development methodology that emphasizes short, iterative planning and development cycles. So here basically the development phase. So in development phase, it's very difficult to make everything automate. So developer has to write the code. And here we are using the approach where we divide entire task into the small tasks. And these small tasks are basically where the software development methodology and other planning and development strategies you are using. Code is written in any language, but it is maintained using version control tools. These are continuous development tools, DevOps tools. So the most popular tools are GitHub, Git and GitHub, Bitbucket, Subversion Control. So when developers write a code, he or she is ultimately moves that code into the some repository, some central repository. And there is a very good tool which is Git and GitHub. You see that uh, it is totally dominating in the market. So Git and GitHub, which is an open source, but if you need a private repository, you need to pay the charges. And this tool is maintaining the different versions of your. Now let us talk about the continuous testing. So when we are talking about a continuous testing, so testing is basically it's a script now. So that you write script. So say an example, you are using unit testing, then there is a unit testing frameworks. Like for Java, it is JUnit. If you are using .NET and Unit, Selenium. Selenium is that test automation where you can write the test cases by using writing some code in the language. So that is Selenium with Java, Selenium with Python, Selenium with .NET, etc. HP load balancer, Cucumber. So these are the tools which you can use for the different purposes for load balancer, performance testing, right? So if you are using any testing tool, and these testing tools are basically are responsible for testing your application and you are making it automate, then it is called continuous testing. Okay, so now developer is writing the code, and as soon as he push that code into the repository, it is automatically built, automatically tested. So that automatically tested will be happening with the help of such kind of tools. Okay, so this is the continuous testing, and you are using some tool, right? So some of the tools I have mentioned here. Now the continuous integration. So when we are talking about continuous integration, what it is? So say an example, there is a developer, and developer is writing the code. Once he push the code into the central repository, then it is to be built and it is to be tested. And all these processes should be automatic. And once the test is done, then the test results should be uh, given back to the developer by saying that, okay, there are some bugs into your application and these bugs is to be fixed. So for that, developer is basically checking that code. Again, he is pushing the code to the GitHub, and GitHub to build Maven to testing with some framework like Selenium, and then if everything is fine, then it is then it is even though it's fine or not fine. So that cycle which get created means push the code, build, test, and send the feedback to the developer. So this is called continuous integration. And in most of the DevOps interviews or DevOps job description, you can see that there is a CI/CD pipeline they talk about. So CI/CD pipeline is nothing but from there CI is continuous integration. And this process we can achieve with the help of continuous integration or tool, and the one which we will have in our syllabus is Jenkins. So if you see this, so we have the development. So these are the different developers who are writing the code, and ultimately it goes to the source control, and then automatically there is a trigger happen which will build your code, and it will test your application, and the feedback goes back to the developer. So this is called the continuous integration. Now let us talk about continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So what is continuous delivery and what is continuous deployment? Let me show with this diagram. So here you can see that there is a code commit, Git and GitHub, test, Selenium, continuous integration, which is with the help of Jenkins, acceptance testing, which is again a customer is checking and his he's saying everything is fine. But before moving to the production, there is some manual approval is required. So before moving to the production, if some approval is required, manual approval is required, it could be your project manager, maybe ADM or someone, then this is called continuous delivery. So continuous delivery, everything is here automated, but move to production is it requires some manual approval. But if you make this manual approval as automated, then it is called continuous deployment. Okay, so this is the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. For the continuous if when we are talking about the configuration management change is a very vital part of your DevOps world, where you are maintaining the infrastructure with your code. And uh, we have Ansible, we have Puppet, we have chef. So these three are included in our syllabus, where we are basically talking about what is pull based mechanism, what is push based mechanism in the DevOps world. So these three, which is Ansible, Chef, and Puppet. Chef and when we are talking about the pull-based or push-based mechanism, so when we are talking about Ansible, it's a push-based, whereas other is the pull-based mechanisms. We are going to discuss in our course about the containers. If you want to compare container, means if you are totally new to the container, you don't know what is container, so you can think container as a lightweight images, same as your virtual machine. So virtual machines comes with a very heavy image, but in the Docker we are basically going to create some containers, and these containers are your lightweight images. So for example, you want to create a web server, or you want to create a database server. So instead of depending upon the virtual machine, now you can create a very lightweight images. And why it is very lightweight, that we will see in our course. And that is very interesting topic and very demanding in the market, because now the implementations are happening on the containers. So containers part, we are going to discuss about Docker, and there is one container orchestration. So when we are talking about the orchestration, it is basically how to maintain the containers, how to manage the containers. So if I need a replication, if I need zero downtime, so all these things you can do with the help of the orchestration tool. So one of the orchestration tool which we are going to use is Docker Swarm, and second, which is again a very fantastic tool, that is Kubernetes. So Kubernetes we are going to discuss in detail. We are going to write some scripts in Kubernetes, YAML scripts, and these YAML scripts are basically related to how to manage the containers, how to deploy the containers, how to create a cluster, all these things. And there are a lot of things with the Kubernetes we can do. So that we will discuss in the container orchestration Kubernetes. And when we talk about the continuous monitoring, so this tool is specially especially for the operation team, those who are monitoring the application. And monitoring the application means if the application is down, if the application server is down, application is running with out of memory, or CPU utilization is high. So these things we want to make it automate, and that we can do with the help of the monitoring tool. In our syllabus, we are going to talk about Nagios, but there are other tools are also available. Okay, so now you can see the old way to uh, for the coding is is too much manual. So in the manual tool, what we are basically doing, we are creating the code, then we give it to the build team, and from build team to testing, testing to release, release to operation. And the new way is basically is the continuous life cycle, where everything is automated. So there is no manual intervention, there is no manual handoffs to the next team. Everything is in a pipeline, and that pipeline is CI/CD pipeline, which we are going to create by using Jenkins. So just let me recap what are the things we are going to discuss in our syllabus. So in your syllabus, we have Git and GitHub, which is the version control system. Second, we have we are going to talk about the containers, where we have the Docker and Docker Swarm. Next, We have the orchestration. So Docker Swarm is basically orchestration tool, but we are going to discuss a lot about Kubernetes in up to advanced level. Then we have next the configuration management tool, where we are going to discuss about Ansible, Puppet, and Chef. Next, we will have the then after that we will talk about the build tool, which is Maven. And after Maven, we are going to discuss about the CI/CD pipeline, where we are going to talk about Jenkins. And in the end, we are going to discuss about the Nagios monitoring tool. So here, this is the basically uh, some of the tools which we are going to use for infrastructure point of view, where you are going to create virtual machines. So we are going to use AWS virtual machine, but this DevOps course is not basically for the AWS course, but for the infrastructure point of view, we are going to use the AWS machine. And we are basically going to talk about how to create the machines, how to open the firewall, and how to connect with the different SSH client. The course will be totally Linux based course. So we are going to use the Linux machines. So basic knowledge of Linux will be preferable, but if you don't have, then you need to follow the steps which I will be using during the course. And the commands are not tough commands. You can easily grab those commands. Okay, so I'm done with my part. So you
Great.
can take over.
This was quite informative, Raman. Thank you so much. And I see you have taken a lot of questions already. So thank you so much for that as well. For our attendees, I still see there are a lot many questions we can probably not take at this point of time due to time constraints. I have a quick announcement to make. A lot of you have been asking about CI/CD, Docker, Kubernetes, Nagios, and whatnot. We have planned a one-day with extensive hands-on practicals uh, on Docker and Kubernetes. This will be specifically for all of you present here. You can actually enroll in the session, and this will also have a certification at the end. In case you are interested to know more about this, I will quickly leave a link so that you guys can directly go there and log in. I am entering the link into the chat space here, and yeah, here it is. It is in the chat space mentioned for all of you. You can go there directly, look at the overall concept, agenda, duration, everything will be mentioned there. In case you still have any issues, you can always write to webinar@cognitia.com. Please make sure you spell Cognitia correctly, and we will be able to assist you further. That's number one. Second is a lot of you are also interested in knowing more about the weekend batches and in depth about the DevOps technology. We have a session starting, a weekend batch starting from 25th of April. That is the coming Saturday, which only happens over the weekends and on virtual platform. If you are interested in enrolling yourself in that session as well, you can go to our website and click on the DevOps Plus course, and you will be able to look at all the agenda and the curriculum that we will be covering up there. Just in a snapshot, we will be it will be a complete 40-45 hours of training or just over the weekend. So it will be spread across a month and a half or so. You will learn extensively about Puppet, Chef, Jenkins, Nagios, and GIT. More details can be fetched from our website. You can go there and try enrolling yourself. If you have a doubt any day, please write back to us. We are here to support you to keep on the learning. So yes, these are the two sessions. Masterclass happens to be just one day session with extensive hands-on. 90% would be practical, 10% would be theory. A certification would be coming to your way. Along with that, we also have a full-fledged training on DevOps starting from 25th of April again, but this will continue for a month and a half. So in case you're interested, please enroll and for drop in your queries. In case you are still finding any of the doubts, please mention in the survey form that you will receive immediately after you log out of the session right now. And our team will be getting back to you and we'll be able to help you further. I hope I'm clear. And in case you have any more doubts, feel free to reach us through emails anytime. I'll just mention the email address as well that you can write back to if you have any of the concerns or if you want to enroll in the sessions. It is webinar@cognixia.com. You'll find it in the chat box again. I have mentioned it to the entire audience. Thank you so much. I think we are all going to have a great weekend. Please make it more productive. Be safe, stay indoors, and take care. Thank you so much.